So I'm here with Yoram Baltinester. He's a life coach and a professional speaker and a workshop facilitator. And he has invited me from time to time to be a facilitator with him in a workshop he does called the Ultimate Workshop, which is a 3-day weekend. And you have one coming up, right, Yoram?
Yes, I do. It's coming up
And
October 6th.
so tell us a little bit about the people, the kind of people that come to this workshop. What are they struggling with? What are they suffering from? And then we'll talk a little bit about what you do and what's the experience that they get to have because they worked with you that they didn't get to have prior.
Sounds good. So the people who show up to the workshop typically find that whatever it is that they want to achieve in a particular area of their life, and it could be health, or it could be business, or it could be relationship, is either not happening or not happening fast enough, or it's a struggle with another area and they feel like they have to give up something in order to make this happen. And they come in to resolve that conflict.
So people generally struggle in one of three areas. It's either with health or wealth or relationships. And you're going to take someone that has a yearning or a desire and is either experiencing blocks or a huge gap or fissure between what they want and where they are.
Correct.
And which of these areas would you say you specialize in?
Well, I'd say that my own experience has been mostly in the business area. I say I have experience in the relationship area as well, and health is not my area of expertise at all.
Okay.
So kind of ranking them.
So tell me a little bit about what is a business? You help people in the business area. Why should people even have one, and what's the experience that they're looking for by having a business?
We have an accepted paradigm that says that in order to achieve a category of goals, and especially if you want to do that for a majority of your time and get in exchange to your contribution a monetary reward, then we should have a business. And not only do we have that paradigm, but we actually are encouraged through legislation and taxation code and governmental encouragement to have businesses. That's what they want us to do. That's part of the game that we're all playing right now in the economical / political arena.
Right. And people can either own a business or be an employee. Can you say a little bit about the distinctions and differences in their personalities?
Well, I don't know about personality necessarily because there's not a category of that, but it's a choice. You can be an employee or you can be a business owner. And some people say that that's a whole lot of differences there. I tend to look at it in a slightly different way because to me, if you are an employee, then you have chosen to have a business with a single client and you in a way have that relationship where your boss tells you what to do. Well, you know what? Your clients tell you what to do if you're a business owner. So this is just a different framework to look at it. When you chose to focus all your attention and most of your time, and maybe inside of a more rigid infrastructure, a more rigid structure, not infrastructure, where you spend your time and how you do things and what you do, then you become an employee. An employee also allows you to be more focused and only handle a very specific and targeted task, whereas being a business owner, you can work with multiple clients. However, you do need to handle various facets of that little operation that we or you call a business. And it tend to be not so rigid in the structure. In other words, when you're an employee, you may be working 9 to 5, whereas in a business owner situation, you may be working other hours.
Okay. So employee, business owner, entrepreneur. Now, my experience of the workshops that you put together is you fill the room primarily with entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I
Okay.
wouldn't say that's 100%, but most of them would be entrepreneurs.
Or at least entrepreneurial spirit. And we've heard that people that are in that employment category of the world, at least the majority of them, are not fulfilled in their work. And I'm assuming that the work that you do with people is to help bring them to higher levels of fulfillment. Can you tell us a story of, that gives people an example of what it is that you do?
Yes, and I suspect we're pretty. In fact, I know we're pretty similar in that. My promise to people who are unfulfilled in their employment is, by the time you're going to be done working with me, then one of two things is going to hold true. Either you fall in love again with what you're doing and become fulfilled in your employment, or you're going to make a decision that that employment is no longer what fulfills you, and you will know at that point what you would like to do and have a transition plan on how to get there. And the little asterisk next to you will know what you want to do, that includes the option to take your time finding out. But even if you take your time finding out, you'd still have to have a leg in, you need to be grounded a little bit. So being grounded a little bit means you still have to pay your bills, and you still have to put food on the table and have a roof above your head. And if you can manage to do that while taking your time to figure out what it is that you want to use the time that you have on this earth in this lifetime for, that's good enough by me, because that is not going to give you that feeling of not being fulfilled.
Okay, so you have pretty good clarity around businesses and entrepreneurs and how people work and employees, and you've got the expertise to be able to take someone from a pretty chaotic place of being unhappy with whatever they're doing and take them through a process. And it sounds like you almost have a guarantee that if people work with you, you're gonna guarantee that they either are going to go back to loving what they're going to do, or they're going to have something else that they know they want to pursue and are going to know what the steps are to pursue it.
Correct.
So there's going to be some personal coaching here, and there's going to be some accountability coaching, obviously, because if they don't take steps, they're not going to have a new experience. One way or the other, they've got to either shift emotionally in the business they're in, or they've got to shift to get into another environment where they get to have the experience they want to have. Correct. And you, I've had some very powerful conversations with Shifra, who is your wife that you work with, and she does quite a radical and direct approach to accountability coaching, which I prefer. I just love that there's no beating around the bush. She's extremely efficient. She's very loving and sensitive, and yet she doesn't tolerate all the sabotage that people often go through. So do you have a specific winning story where you've taken somebody sort of through that, and they started out with that chaos, and then you were able to tell us a little bit about what you and Shifra actually did with them and where they ended up ultimately?
Well, I can tell you multiple stories, but I'll tell you there is a story of this one person who's a friend, and he's been coaching with me for a long time. And so, interestingly enough, people have various areas of their lives, like we mentioned, and sometimes it hurts in one area and the symptom is in one area, whereas the source and the problem lies in another. We started to take this apart. We started to work on this. And what had happened is he came in looking to improve his relationships. And that happened. And by the time that happened, what surfaced is his frustration with his employment and being employed. And what we needed to do, the first thing we needed to do was to find out what is going to make him fulfilled. And we found that out. And now that took a half a year.
But you worked through some relationship things as well. So here you are, you've got a guy who's going through chaos, he's unfulfilled. And that's been my experience too, is that first we have a feeling, and then we project it into some area of life, whether it may be our relationships. So you worked with him on the area of relationships, you got that up to a level of fulfillment, and then suddenly this unfulfillment shows up in another area of life. And what was it that took 6 months?
Well, I want to answer that, but I want to mention beforehand that this is not a process of excavation where you go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. These areas of life are kind of dynamic, and we could work on one area of life and improve it, and meanwhile and concurrently, another area of life starts losing momentum and becomes gradually an area that needs more attention than the first one. And there's two approaches to that. One approach is, well, we're going to focus on the first one until there's a problem that we have defined that needs to be resolved. Or there's another one that says we are going to look periodically to see which area needs more attention right now and handle that one until next time we do a checkpoint. Now, both of these approaches work. Now, in this case, we're going back to your question where we looked at something for a half a year. The reason was that the approach was, okay, well, I think this is going to make me fulfilled. So, okay, well, we checked that. It wasn't really bad. And it was already in momentum since before our engagement. So we tried to make that work. Similar to the story where I said, okay, you have an employee and either we're going to make it work for them or they're going to leave. We had a beginning of a business. This person has been an employee at that point. And we had the beginning of a business. We tried to make it work. We tried to make it work for about maybe 4 months. Then there was a break point, which was externally induced. Something changed in the environment for the business. I don't want to go into too much details. And we had to go back to the drawing board, saying, yeah, let's put everything aside and start with a fresh beginning, with a blank slate, going, okay, what is going to be fulfilling for you? And then we found a business that is, in fact, much more fulfilling, much more expressive of this one person's gift. And when I say a gift, I need to clarify it a little bit. I believe that there are many, many things that people are good at. And I believe that one of them typically stands out, and they're brilliant at it. And we call it a gift, we call it a talent, we call it by many names, superpower, magic, whatever we call it. They typically aren't aware of it. And that is something that if you utilize and you make use of that gift or talent in what you're doing, it innately produces satisfaction for you.
Which is the ultimate goal.
Which is the ultimate goal, is to feel like, is to be fulfilled.
Right. So you're using two processes. One is a process of exploration, and then you use a process of elimination. So we've got to try something because we only have, like, it's like, all right, when you're in chaos, you don't know, but if you move, you'll get some feedback and some data, right?
Right, and because chaos is a cyclical process, then sometime you need to patiently waiting or even keep working with what you have just to get to a chaos level. And then when you're in the chaos, it allows you to say, okay, fine, blank slate, like let's start again.
And you seem pretty confident that regardless of what someone's going through in this area where they're starting off with either they're disgruntled or grieving, they have grievances or they're in chaos, and they come to you, how is it that you're able to identify, flush this out? Is it something that you do with Shifra? Is it something where you work with it and then when they have a goal, she takes over? Tell me a little bit about how that process works.
That's a very good question. And the reason why I'm so confident that that can be done is for two reasons. And none of them has to do anything with me. So this is not me finding it, it's them finding it. And the two things that I'm counting on in that process, number one, is the coaching process. And the coaching process consists of asking people questions that are empowering questions, that are directed and sequenced properly. And the second thing is, I believe wholeheartedly that people have the answers. So given an empowering set of questions, they come up with it on their own.
So you're getting them out of a box, for lack of a better word. They're sort of stuck, and you're asking them sort of where they lead themselves out of their own box.
In a way, out of their own comfort zone. Because
So,
if everybody seems to be always in a comfort zone, right? But if somebody is not fulfilled inside of their comfort zone, then the answer is going to be outside, and these questions are going to take them outside, first to see it, then to decide whether they want to pursue it, and should they decide that they want to pursue it, then we'll get them from point A to point B, which is where the accountability comes in.
now, I'm a little bit skeptical when I start hearing people say, hey, we're going to take you to the next level and we'll get you outside your box and we're going to do all this stuff, because I really feel that life hands us a set of parameters that inside ourselves we first have to be proficient at learning to dance with life. So how much of your process is getting people out of, through their comfort zone into a state where they feel like they're alive again, and how much is it in getting them to stay where they are and reframe their thinking process or their mental habits so they get to experience more fulfillment there?
See, Greg, they cannot stay where they are because where they are doesn't work for them. So if they reframe, then they become the same person in a different place. So either way, I'm taking them to where they're not. That's number one. Now, here's the deal with taking people to the next level, and why we both don't like it a whole lot as a phrase that is used, I might say overused in the coaching arena, is because many times when people say we're going to take you to the next level, it is judgmental of the current level and actually saying, I'm going to make you a better person. No, look, I'm not going to make anyone a better person than who they are. I think they're the best person anyway. But what I do think is that by shifting them to a different place, then they could feel better about themselves. They could have a better experience about life, and they can actually have that experience that we call fulfillment. It's not that they're going to be better people, but it's that the way that they are going to look at their experience is going to shift.
Okay. So again, you're taking them to a new place on one of two levels. What would you say to someone that's just skeptical? They've had too many teachers. They didn't like that, they signed up for a workshop and it didn't work, and they've invested a whole bunch already and they haven't had a breakthrough, and they're just skeptical about the whole process.
I would say, I'm really sorry that you had bad experiences with seminars and coaches that didn't deliver.
Well, and you, as I heard, we're saying that when you work with somebody, and this is my experience of you, you're not willing to let somebody make an investment with you and then move on just because they put in a certain amount of time. You actually are committing to having them have a certain experience, not just like, all right, I'll give you so many sessions, or you can come to 2 weekends and have 10 sessions. You're literally asking them all along the way, how far are we and how close are we to having you actually have that experience, and you're committing to deliver an experience.
I am committing to deliver an experience, and I think there is a true movement that is starting in our industry. Every day that passes, I hear more coaches in our industry saying enough is enough with the phenomena of coaches not delivering, and I see two things. Number one is a trend that I've been in that boat since we started the Ultimate Workshop, which is I never want the Ultimate Workshop to have 100 people in a room. We keep it to a small group where we can commit that each and every person would have the experience for which they came. And I certainly do whatever it takes. If somebody wants to buy a 10-pack of session with a coach, then I'm almost tempted to say that that's going to be in the supermarket one day. But if you want a customized experience, you're going to the restaurant, not to the supermarket, right?
That's really true. Good metaphor. And you have, you do have individual coaching, you have weekends, but you also have an annual program. And that's where I'm guessing you basically say, okay, it may take 6 months just to get to the bottom of what really is going to have you fulfilling. And then you got to take some courageous action, make some phone calls, schedule meetings, put documents together so that you're really connecting with other people and actually creating the experience you want to have. Which of these three is the most rewarding for you personally?
To be honest with you personally, I love the 3-day event the most. The 1-year program is a long and tedious process, and it's more like the 3-day workshop is a breakthrough process where people break through to clarity. The 1 year is an implementation process, and implementation tends to be long, multiple steps, take effort, and somewhat repetitive in style in what needs to be done, because it's a step and another step and another step and another steps. I'm personally more of a get something done quickly and efficiently. And so as an experience, I love more the 3 days than the 1 year, although I got to tell you, I love them both or I wouldn't be doing them.
Of course, of course. Well, and my experience of you is you've got far more patience than me, because I want to have people have immediate results. That's why I help, and facilitate in the workshops. But then you and Shifra work together to create that 1 year experience. What is Shifra's strength and what is her preference?
Shifra's strength is the steadiness in which she operates a methodology. So she is patient, and she is going to keep you on task, on target. What's the next step? Do it. What's the next step? Do it. And really, when you say she's very direct with her coaching, it's not in an aggressive manner. It's more.
Oh no, I just thought it's a beautiful marriage of intolerance with patience, because my experience of Shifra is if you're headed down some path that she knows you've already been down in your life and you're just putting a different color on it, she'll stop you and really ask the question so that you get clarity about, am I just doing the same old thing or am I actually trying to do something new?
Right. It's almost the difference between saying, hey, I told you to do it 3 times. What's wrong with you? Which is a shaming way. It kind of reminds me on the old yellow pages method of sales training. It's like everybody lists their results and everybody shames together the people who were the poorest result achievers. But with her, it's like, okay, well, we talked about it for 3 times and 3 times it didn't do it. So what's up? Let's talk about that. Let's find out what was in the way. Because if it was in the way once, it is sure to come up again. So now that we have it in the spotlight, let's look at it.
Yeah, well, it's refreshing for me to experience her marriage of heartfelt curiosity and willful intolerance, in really getting through, because it makes it just so efficient and clear. And, as you know, I've had conversations with Shifra that are pretty intense, but she just has you feeling so safe, because that she's not going to, she's not competing with you. She's not judging you. She's just really looking at you from a very caring perspective and saying, look, what's really true here? And she reminds me frequently of like things are like, well, you're saying this, but then that went on. And so let's get to, and it's not ever from a judgmental space or a space of belittling. It's always from a space of committing to clarity.
Yes. Yes.
Very cool.
I love your conversations, by the way. I'm watching it.
I know. They're fun. They're fun to be on a fly on the wall, right?
Exactly.
And I really want to say also that I admire your process, because you do allow people to have the experience they're having without intervening so much. And yet there's been some very powerful moments in your 3-day workshop where you are just, I'm going, what the hell is he doing? And yet there's an absolute, people are, the only thing that they're allowed to do in those moments when you create that energy is they've got to find it within themselves. Because you don't leave anything else in the room for them to rely on. There's no, life vest. There's no, ship coming along. It's like this is where they've got to learn to swim, and it's a huge commitment to be able to take people to that level. Do you want to say a little bit about how the weekend for you progresses and what it's like for people?
I'm putting out a little side there because I found that every weekend tends to behave differently a little bit. But you were spot on the way you described it. And as you described it, yes, we take out every possible thing that you can hold on to, and we allow people to find it within themselves. And as you were talking about it, I was actually reflecting about how much that is true for life as well. And so, when we look at the weekend, we do something very powerful at the beginning of the weekend by asking people to have an idea of who they want to be at the end of the weekend. And then we employ a pretty powerful process that gets them there. And as much as I would love to take credit for the process, for getting people there, it's the process that does that. It's not me.
Right. Well, there's several processes, very powerful processes. And well, I just wanted to acknowledge you for being so committed to people. I've always told you that with all the facilitators that I've worked with or worked for, and you are the most courageous in being willing to dispense with the structure while still holding a very committed and intentional direction. But you're willing to say, look, you every few hours you redesign where we're going based on where everybody in the room is at. And yet somehow the feeling at the end of the workshop seems very similar to previous ones, where there's a confidence, there's a peace, there's a sense of of clarity. And unlike me, what you do is you have that year-long process that people can have a commitment to actually creating the results as they define them, and that you're willing to listen to that and create it. It's refreshing because having worked with other coaches, you kind of go through their process. It's often, I'll take you from here to here. This is what I do, and if you want to do something else, go talk to somebody else. But I like the way that you trust people and know that if you put them through a certain set of highly experiential exercises, they're gonna create their own answers.
They will. And we employ what I call the CIA principle. I don't know if it's a good name, but CIA stands for clarity, integrity, and action. And what happens is, if you think of a small toddler, is when, I don't know, before they learned how to walk, small baby. And if you watch them, I had 4 children, so I don't watch a whole lot of babies, but I watch these 4. And there is a point in their lives where they are absolutely clear that this walking thing is something that they want to learn. And out of that clarity, their attempts again and again and again, it's basically an expression of standing in integrity to that clarity, which puts them in action mode. Because every time we have clarity about what we're after, as long as we're willing to be in integrity with that, then action is going to follow. Now, much like babies, they start and they get up and they fall and they stumble, and we need to be there in order to give them a hand for some times, and maybe just watch over them, make sure they don't fall, trip and fall on something that's going to hurt them. And that's the 1-year process. And
sure.
To be honest with you, Shifra and I, the people who are in our 1-year process are pretty much as close as possible to as it gets to being our babies. We think about them sometimes more than we think about our kids.
Right. Well, and I love that you do it for a full year, because so many programs are just for a few months. But when you do it for a full year, if people have most of their issues come up like during the holidays at Christmas time, or most of their issues come up in the spring, you've covered the whole cycle. And that's so important. I know when I've done programs, I've done, a few months. And then they end up calling you back just a few months later, because all of a sudden this whole thing hit and they have a whole childhood set of issues that come up. So, well, any closing comments, anything that you want to leave people with as far as, what you want for them?
I would just say that the experience of being fulfilled is a tremendously important thing, because at the end of the day, what we hear over and over and over again from people who are counselors to those who are about to pass away, or counselors, people who work with people who are terminally ill, or just having conversations with people who are old and maybe getting ready. We hear that the one regret that is the most frequent and the most deep regret is, I do not feel that I fulfilled what I wanted to do, or what I could have done, or what it was mine to do. And most people I talk to know, and they know exactly immediately. If I ask somebody if they're fulfilled, they know. It's a yes, no, and it comes up within them if they're just willing to listen. So what I would leave people with is, ask yourself the question. And if the answer is no, then do something about it. And if you need some help, then you can get help from us, but you don't have to. But don't let yourself either not ask the question or settle for a no.
And what is that question?
The question is, are you fulfilled with what you're doing? Do you have the experience of being fulfilled in your life?
Right. I recently saw a movie called The Circle, and there's a point where they're interviewing this girl to work for this very elite corporation, and they say, what are you most afraid of? And she says, unrealized potential. And it's a good answer, especially for the line of work that we're in. Well, Yoram, if people want to find out more about what you do, what's a good next step, the first step?
Well, the first step, if people want to look at the website, there are two of them actually that are going to give them good information. The first one is yourultimateworkshop.com. That is a website that describes the 3-day event, the 3-day workshop, and that is the place where most people start working with me. The other is heyyoram.com, and I'll spell it for you. It's HEYYORAM.com, and Hey Yoram is a website that will tell you a little bit more about who I am, what I do. So it's more about me. Although I would just say, ask yourself the question, and if you want to do something about that and want our help, then go to yourultimateworkshop.com first.
Cool. So the 3-day workshop is a great place to start, but of course, in order to get there, they want to have a conversation with you.
Yep, and absolutely, this is a place to get help from both of us, and I appreciate a lot your contribution, Tamara's contribution, of course, Shifra. I think we made a team that I have never experienced. In my experience, it's a very, very unique team. It's very different. It is very, very diverse points of view, and somehow it all works together.
Yeah, you get in the workshop, you get coached from north, south, east, and west. And I've noticed that some of the most powerful things that happen in the workshop are during the breaks, because people will come up and talk to either you or me or Shifra or Tamara, get some private coaching, and those little 5-minute intervals where someone comes up and says, I'm just stuck or struggling, or, you said this and I'm confused, or whatever it was, and then there's just like this snapshot of clarity. And as you know, you've referred a few people to me that have been in the workshop that have said, that they had this snapshot moment of clarity, and they may want to talk to me or Tamara or you. Of course, we're all available for that after the workshop. And if they want to reach you, what is your phone number?
My phone number is 858-356-6751. That's again 858-356-6751. As we're talking about it, I'm building that analogy in my mind to the baby that just starts walking, and I recall my at least my first two. I don't know if I did it with all four, but as my eldest started to walk, he would sometime just lose his balance and fall. And I remember him, as he fell down, he would lift his head and look at me with that total bewildered look, going, what happened? And at that point, I used to not do what most people do, because most people would rush to the baby and pick them up. I used to just look at him and say, you fell, get up. And wait for them to get up on their own. And that is what happens in these little 5-minute conversations during the break. People fall and they're looking for a little bit of reassurance that they can get up and whatever it was that they tripped on, just keep going and hopefully not trip over it again.
Very fun. Well, you know, my little saying that I love that we talk so much about in the workshop is there's the most powerful force in nature is a 13-year-old that wants a bicycle. And it's a privilege to work with you, Yoram, to help people get to that place where they have that clarity, because as soon as they have it, as you know, everything seems to unfold, doors open, there's invisible forces that push us forward. And it's great to be a partner with you in that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.